What is up? Welcome to the DFS Academy and welcome to week 18. That's right. Your fantasy league ended last week, but football did not. Fair warning. If you have never played fantasy football on the last week of the NFL season, it gets wild. So let's get weird. Let's get into it. Welcome to the DFS Academy. It is week 18. This is Club Fantasy's weekly DFS show. I am your host, Ryan Weiss, and my co-host, as always, Austin Amendolia. Austin, happy holidays. We've barely seen each other since Christmas, basically. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, for sure. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone. Hope everyone had a good time. Excited for week 18. It's funny, I feel like it's almost like playing like preseason DFS at this point, because you just have to think so much differently about who's starting, who's not starting, and frankly, we're probably going to be changing our lineups right until a game start because we're going to get more information about who is active or not. But I think we have a good indication of which teams are going to be wanting to play their starters and which might not.
Yeah, there's a lot of theory that goes into this week, and I'm going to bring it up to you as we get to it in the show because I have questions myself. What I found interesting is I was expecting to find some really weird names, but there are enough teams that it matters week 18 that I felt like it's safer to stick with the teams that are playing for something. I could be wrong there. And as we get to the positions, maybe in the GPP section, I want to throw some random names at you and see what you feel like. Not maybe the ones I really wanted to pick, but just some different names. But one of the things, and it'll come up at the top of the show, that I'm concerned with is paying for some of these expensive players. And we'll get to that in due time. If you guys have never tuned into an episode of DFS Academy, welcome. I'm guessing it's the fantasy season's over and you're like, what is DFS? We're going to help set cash lineups, GPP lineups, and I'll have Austin give you a quick breakdown of what those mean when we get to those sections. As a quick reminder to the folks, if you want to play DFS with us, we don't just talk it. We actually play with our audience as well. We have contests on both FanDuel and DraftKings. They're $2 contests, little bankroll builders, nice little way to put a little bit of extra money in your FanDuel or DraftKings wallet. Also a cool way to play with some really good people. And at the end of the show, we actually announce the winner. So you get to hear your name at the end of the show if you took the contest down. If you want to talk fantasy football when we are not on YouTube, we do have a very great Discord that I'll let Austin tell you about.
Yeah, we have a listener Discord you can join by following the link in the show description. We have channels for every type of fantasy football you can imagine, including DFS, where we will help you set your lineups every week. I will drop my cash lineup in there as well on Sunday morning, so you know what I am playing in this cash contest, and then we get to celebrate our wins together, figure out how to be better DFS players, and build this community.
Probably not the time for it, Austin, but I should also mention we got our first fantasy baseball question this week in the Discord server. So we don't just talk fantasy football, and with fantasy baseball right around the corner, not a bad time to jump in there.
Yeah, I was very pleased to see some fantasy baseball content coming in.
I knew that was going to bring a smile to your face. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk a lot about week 18 in the show. We're going to talk a lot about cash contest and GPP contest. But we start with the biggest GPP contest from week 17. We call it Answers to the Test. This is last week's Millie Making lineup. Austin, I think this is the most common sense lineup we've seen, certainly in the last month. Drake May, Chase Brown, Ramondre Stevenson, Michael Wilson, Stephon Diggs, Parker Washington, Trey McBride, Michael Mayer. I just noticed it was a 2 tight end build. And the Giants defense that scored 218.2 DraftKings points. I have to say that's on the low side for what we've been seeing. When you look at this game, it was clearly a big bet on the New England Patriots, which paid off. Drake May, Ramondre Stevenson, Stephon Diggs. Easy to pay off when you're playing the New York Jets. Also no bring back when you're playing the New York Jets. The second bet in this game was on the Cincinnati-Arizona game, and that was also a nice hit for them. They had Chase Brown versus the Michael Wilson, Trey McBride combo. Giants defense smashed. I want to take this opportunity to give a shout out to Club Fantasy's own Josh Hudson, who was talking up the Giants defense for all of week 17. I tried to temper expectations. Turns out Josh was right. He did play his tight end against his defense, which is a little bit strange. Michael Mayer versus the Giants defense, but it worked out well for him. And then Austin, I think the most interesting thing about this lineup is the entire world told you Parker Washington could not do it 2 weeks in a row. And then Parker Washington did it 2 weeks in a row. And that really kind of brought this lineup together.
Yeah, I was very annoyed at Parker Washington last week in particular because I was like, where are my Jacoby Myers targets I need for my cash contest? But I mean, there were a lot of things about this lineup that we talked about, and I think attacking that Patriots game was a really good direction to go, especially once Matt Collins was rolled out. It became very clear that Stephon Diggs was going to be the primary target getter there. And yeah, this one, it feels like just pick the right 2 or 3 games and go from there. And that's kind of a common way we approach these, and as at least in line with how I try and approach these week to week. So it worked out this week. And what was a low scoring Millie Maker?
Yeah. Interesting that Raiders tight ends have made the Millie making lineup for back-to-back weeks to finish out the regular season here. Brock Bowers last week, Michael Mayer this week. And then Austin, your cash contest, you didn't actually put your results in here. I'm going to let you talk about these players. I will tell you that I did terribly last week and did not cash in any of my contests. So.
Yeah, I unfortunately also missed the cash line last week, which is why I didn't put my results in there, because there's not much to report back. Yeah, it was an interesting week. I mean, one of the things first off is Jacoby Brissett finally dudded. He only got like, I think it was like 13, 14 DraftKings.
Yeah,
points.
he was a little bit better than he was the week before, but definitely he fell off a cliff over these last 2 weeks. So.
Yeah, and most people played Trevor Lawrence, who got 24, 25 points, and that really benefited their lineups. And then I went with Juwan Johnson, who was a fine play at tight end from a points perspective, but Michael Mayer was the chalky tight end, and he was cheaper, and so it enabled you to do more with your salary. And it was funny, when I posted my cash contest in the Discord, I said, oh, you could also pivot to Michael Mayer and get both Jamar Chase and Jackson Smith and Jigba in your lineup. But then I didn't do it myself. And if I had, I probably would have cashed, because Jamar Chase was the expensive play to have. He was one of the highest scoring players on the slate. And for that price range in particular, he was one of the best values.
Yeah, I think what got me was I did the Trevor Lawrence, Brenton Strange build, and all week for lineup advice, when people were giving me fringe tight ends, I said, just go get Michael Mayer. Just go get Michael Mayer. It never occurred to me, and this is a cognitive dissonance that I have to remember for next season. When I'm giving fantasy advice, sometimes I'm giving DFS advice. Michael Mayer was dirt cheap and would have given me some opportunities. And then the other part was I went JSN, who was kind of mid, whereas, as you mentioned, Jamar Chase was chalk and smashed. And that just kind of, if you got a little bit different, it didn't work out well for you.
Yeah, and that's such a good point on like the fantasy side of it too, on like the redraft leagues and whatnot, because I feel like when I've done the start sit different day show for Club Fantasy, I've had pretty good weeks, because I like remind myself like, oh yeah, this player is a really good play. I need to find a way to get them into my DFS lineups. Yeah. And it also helps the other way as well, makes me better for those redraft contests.
Well, you're smarter than me, because that was the show where I told everybody, like, every question was like Taysom Hill, this random dude, or Colby Parkinson. And I said, no, the answer is Michael Mayer. Like, if these are your choices, if you can't get Juwan Johnson or Brenton Strange, because obviously I was big in on Brenton Strange, if you can't get those two, go get Michael Mayer. And like, again, it's like, that's the advice that's cash advice, Ryan. Like, if you think he's that good of an anchor and he's relatively min priced, do that yourself, buddy. So that's just a mistake on my part. We live and we learn. And now we get to week 18, the final week of the NFL regular season. But do not fret. Austin and I will be breaking down the playoffs much the same way we did the Thanksgiving and Christmas Day games, where we will go game by game and tell you the players that we are interested in and the players that we think are traps. But that is a story for next week. This week, we talk week 18. We get into cash. This is Austin's specialty. We start with what we call top of the class, the most expensive player that Austin is willing to put in a lineup. And Austin, right away, I saw your name. I don't disagree with it. Austin, when I was doing my DFS rankings this morning, I am afraid of all of the higher priced players. So can you talk me in to Mr. Puka Nakua?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, I put a player here because we
There's
have
a
this
section.
category.
There's a blank space.
And I feel very similarly. I'm very nervous of paying up for anybody this week because all of the expensive players, there is no reason for almost any of them to play.
Any of them.
Like most teams don't have things to play for at this stage of the NFL season. The reason that the only way you can talk me into playing Puka Nakua is if the Seattle Seahawks beat the San Francisco 49ers on Saturday.
Okay.
And in that case, a Los Angeles Rams win gets them up to the 5th seed instead of the 6th seed.
Interesting. Okay.
I think that is actually valuable because the 5th seed team is going to play the winner of the NFC South.
And
in the
that
first
feels
round
like a bye week.
Basically a bye week. So I could see the Rams playing their starters long enough to get a good padded lead and then sitting. So it really depends on the results of that Saturday game. And that's going to be a theme that comes up a couple of times depending on what happens in those 2 Saturday games can kind of help set the stage for what happens later on.
I think that's an excellent point. And you just said something that unlocked a lock in my brain immediately. And that was the Rams will play their starters long enough. That's a really another interesting aspect of week 18 is that a full half of Puka Nakua is probably better than a full game of, I'm going to throw a name out that I like, Jahan Dotson.
Yeah.
And so like Jahan Dotson's interesting because the Eagles are likely to rest their starters. I was going to bring him up in the wide receiver section of the next section, but regardless, he's interesting because the Eagles are going to rest their starters. But Jahan Dotson with whoever the Eagles' backup quarterback is in a full game is likely not as valuable as one half of Puka Nakua trying to win a football game.
Yeah, exactly. So,
especially for cash, I want to be very clear about that. For GPP, it's kind of the other way around. But for cash, the safe half of Puka.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really what I'm focusing on is trying to figure out who do I think are going to be the safe picks. And then this is something, one of the things about this week too is I'll be playing less volume in general. Like I will be putting less money up for contests, and I'll probably play less cash contests as well because cash is going to get tricky this week with trying to track who's playing and who's not. So I actually will probably lean more into tournaments because of that and play into some of that volatility. But if I am playing cash, that is the scenario where I could see myself playing Puka Nakua. But by and large, I am kind of avoiding those more expensive players this week.
Me as well. One name I wanted to throw out here that you didn't pick, and I don't normally throw mud, but I was verifying my DFS rankings before we got on the show today, and I told you one of the things I do is when I set my DFS rankings. For those who are tuning in new to the show, our DFS rankings are not available at Club Fantasy. I also do rankings for footballguys.com, so that's where you'd find my DFS rankings. Austin, when I do my initial set, I don't look at anybody else's data. I go from what I've taught myself. And so I made my first run of rankings, and then I go look and see who I have ranked, who the contestants doesn't, and who they have ranked that I don't. And the name that stuck out to me like a sore thumb, Austin, is all of my fellow rankers, every one of them, has Bijan Robinson as their number 1 RB this week. And I understand what Bijan Robinson just did on Monday night. I can find zero incentive for Bijan or the Falcons to give maximum effort in week 18. And we're acting like Tyler Algier hasn't stolen from this guy all season. You don't get credit for last week's points, and I'm a little disappointed to see Bijan Robinson. I could look like an idiot next week. Bijan could go for 200 again. But I don't think he's going to, and I think that is a concerning overpay right now.
Yeah, he is off the board for me in cash for that very reason. The only scenario, the Falcons, they don't seem to me to be a spiteful team, but they do actually play a role in the NFC South championship this weekend in the playoffs. If the Falcons win and the Buccaneers win, the Panthers still make the playoffs. So there's
because of division record.
Yeah. And so there's this weird situation that happens in that scenario. So like the Panthers get in if they win outright, or if they lose and the Falcons win. And I don't know how much the Falcons care about that and like want to see the Buccaneers get screwed out of this.
I'll give you that. I did not know that. So.
But I agree with you by and large. Like Bijan is not really on my radar for cash this week. I get it coming off of last week, but I feel the same way where I'm like, it's week 18. Like if Michael Penix was playing, I could see it being different, but we're getting Kirk Cousins again. Like we know what this is. Like we don't need to risk our elite running back who clearly he could be leading the league in scrimmage yards if he was really put to use the way he ought to be.
Yeah, if Bijan Robinson didn't prove to the Falcons who and what he was last week, I don't know what else he needs to do. If I'm the Falcons, Bijan Robinson doesn't suit up this week. Plain and simple. Tyler Algier is on his way out the door anyway. Let's run that boy into the ground and figure out how we're going to use Bijan next year. I would spend all of week 18 figuring out how we're going to use Bijan Robinson next year. Plain and simple. All right, that's enough talk about the expensive players we don't like. Let's get into the mid-tier players. We call them the band nerds. Too much time on their instrument, not quite ready for top of the class. We're talking $6,000 to $8,000 over on DraftKings. And Austin, unsurprisingly, when you don't like the most expensive players, you have quite a few guys on this list.
Yeah, so first, a couple of guys at running back. I mean, first off, whoever the heck is playing running back for the Minnesota Vikings this week is going to be somebody on my radar. If it's Aaron Jones, great. He's the most expensive one of those. He's at $6,000 on DraftKings, $6,700 on FanDuel. He is questionable. I think he was either limited in practice on Wednesday or did not practice on Wednesday, so he may not even play this week. Jordan Mason is his backup. Jordan Mason was also limited in practice. Yeah. He may not play as well. So Ty Chandler then pops up on the radar as the third string running back if both of those guys sit. Basically, like all three of these guys, they have a good matchup, and I think that there's enough. Like they will likely play their starters regardless, just to go out there and put out a good effort. But for me, like I like the matchup for Minnesota this week, so I'm looking at one of those guys. And then this one, this is going to be like the thing that we talk about throughout the show, but this one is a little bit subject to change depending on if we hear anything about people getting sat for week 18. But I'm intrigued by Travion Henderson, who is $6,100 on DraftKings. It's a fairly cheap price for him, and the New England Patriots, they are still eligible to have the number one seed.
Exactly.
The Denver Broncos are also eligible for the number one seed. Now, the issue is the Broncos play the Chargers this week. The Chargers have already announced that they are not playing Justin Herbert. Yep. So the situation may end up that it doesn't matter. But the good thing is both of these teams play at 4:00. Yep. So we're not going to have a situation where we're going to know going into, or where the teams are going to know going into their game if they can lose the game or not. And so I could see both the Patriots and the Broncos just starting their starters to, again, make sure they get ahead early in the game, build up enough of a lead, and then rest their starters. And the Patriots are going up against the New York Jets, who have been atrocious against
Miami.
Jets against Miami. Sorry. Yep. There's a Jets reference somewhere in the show coming up.
Oh, you do that all the time. Exactly. Someone's playing the Jets.
Somebody's playing the Jets at some point, but they are going up against Miami, who has allowed the third most points to the running back position over the past 4 weeks. So it's a really good spot for Travion Henderson this week. And I'll go ahead and just address the Ramondre Stevenson in the room. He got the touchdowns last week. Henderson got the touches. Now, Stevenson also got the catches last week, which is good for DraftKings. But for me, that would be a reason to play him in GPP settings. But for cash, I'm still looking at Travion Henderson.
100%. And I think you may have come up with a new kind of setting for GPP versus cash. Is you said Ramondre got the touchdowns, Travion got the touches. In cash, I want touches, plain and simple. Yeah. I want as much volume as I can get. And the other thing is, I don't see this team going to their third string running back. So if they go into the second half of this game, it could be Henderson still taking a third of the touches in the second half, even with the backups. So
yeah, there you go.
And you can't be concerned about the concussion. They rushed him back last week for what I thought was a completely meaningless game, and it turns out I was right. So
it was that was definitely a surprising situation for me.
Yep.
So also in this price range, I have 3 receivers. I've got Michael Wilson at $6,600, Nico Collins at $7K, and Wan'Dale Robinson at $6,100. All of these teams have something to play for in one way or another. And
Yep.
for the Cardinals, I think they're just playing to play at this point. Like I don't anticipate them resting their starters, just because I think that they're still going to want to go out and give it a good try. And Michael Wilson's been getting enough target share that I think we're good to go on that point. The Houston Texans, it's all about seeding, or it's about ensuring that they actually make the playoffs, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I no. Okay, there we go. I was like, something's wrong with my page. It's not refreshed. It is all about seeding for them. So right now they have the 5th seed. 5th seed in the AFC would be set up to play either the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens. I kind of like that. And so I could see them wanting to maintain a 5th seed, but also I believe they're still in contention for winning the AFC South.
If they win and Jacksonville loses, they are the division winner and get home field for round 1. So,
and that's going to be huge for them as well. So they'll want to play their starters and get there. And so Nico Collins, he's got a good matchup. Houston Texans have something to play for. We're set there. Now, Wan'Dale Robinson at $6,100. The New York Giants have nothing to play for. In fact, they probably really want to lose the game so that they get a better draft pick. But I think what they want to play for is setting themselves up for next year. And also,
I think they disproved that last week in the tank off game. Yeah. I don't want to toot my own horn. I think we talked about it on this show. The writing was on the walls. I thought the Giants were not going to tank the way the Raiders did, and they were going to blow them out. And that's exactly what happened. So,
yeah, it worked out. And Wan'Dale Robinson just got ridiculous volume last week. And so in this situation, like, I think they're going to keep looking ahead to next year. I mean, I think Joe Shane needs to prove that he is picking good players. And so he's going to be incentivizing his team to do well. He might like the first overall pick, but I think he's going to like his job security a little bit more. So I think they'll go out, they'll compete, and Wan'Dale Robinson will get the volume to get you there.
Yeah, I think they're going to end up with 2. And to be honest, like, I think the Giants are going to end up trading out of 2, just being very blunt. I know that's not what this show's about. We spent a lot of time on Saturday's show talking about the Giants are an exciting team for next season. If they can add some depth and their line and their front 7, and more importantly, bolster their secondary, because they have the pieces in place on offense. I'm just saying, fun team, a big Wan'Dale Robinson guy. You'll get no pushback from me. Certainly on DraftKings and PPR, you want all the Wan'Dale Robinson you can get.
Yeah, there you go.
Bookworms, easily underestimated, but they are sharp. We're talking the value plays of the week, $4,000 to $6,000 on DraftKings and Austin. You kind of round everything out here, and you have these broken down by position, giving people some options.
Yeah, so at quarterback, I have 3 initial picks for cash. The first is Jackson Dart. So we just talked about this New York Giants matchup. Same idea. I don't have much to add there. And Jackson Dart, he'll get it done on the ground too.
Exactly.
The other 2 guys I'm looking at are not maybe names that are super exciting, but they're cheap. So we have Cam Ward at $4,800 and Quinn Ewers at $4,600. They only have to get 15 points for them to get there for a DFS cash perspective. And the thing is, similar thing. Both of these teams have something quote unquote to play for, in that both teams are trying to figure out what they have in their young quarterback and trying to build momentum into next season. And I think that for Tennessee, I mean, it's a decent matchup for Cam Ward, and he's been performing pretty well down the stretch and getting good pass volume, having good fantasy outputs over the past several weeks. So I like him to continue kind of pushing this week. And then for Quinn Ewers, it's taken a couple of weeks, I think, for him to get going, which is, I think, fair in general. But he got up to around 11 points last week. It wasn't a stellar outing, but I think it's a good position for him to potentially continue to take the next step forward. And I think for me in particular in this situation, going up against the New England Patriots, it's not a great matchup. But if they do get behind, if Miami does get behind, New England is prone to sit their starters on the defensive side of the ball to protect their players, and then Quinn Ewers can start to get there in garbage time. So I think because of the salary, I'm okay with going that direction. I'm most likely playing Jackson Dart, but I think there are some people you can look at if you're looking to go even cheaper than that.
Yeah, and let's not forget that the Dolphins actually played well against the Patriots last time they played, scored 27 points. And that was way back in September, week 2 on the season. But they didn't play terribly, and this was obviously very long before Quinn Ewers. But what I like about both of these quarterbacks, Ward and Ewers, is the teams they're playing need to win. That means Ward and Ewers are likely playing from behind most of the time, and they're going to be throwing a ton. And one extra incentive, you're going to talk about Tyler Shuck later on. There's a very real possibility that Cam Ward and Tyler Shuck this week are playing for Offensive Rookie of the Year because nobody else has really stood out. It probably would have been Cam Scatabo if he had been able to play the entire season. But like while Tedero McMillan's been nice, and if they make the playoffs, he's still a wide receiver versus 2 quarterbacks. Like there's just a lot of bias that goes against that. So
yeah,
I think Cam Ward versus Tyler Shuck, they played each other last week, but this week non-head-to-head might even be more interesting for those two.
Yeah, no, I love that. Moving to the wide receiver position for this, I'm looking at Jacoby Myers still this week. I think he got cheaper this week. I feel like
he did.
He's at $5,600.
He's actually, if I remember correctly, because I've been paying attention to this, I think he's went down each of the last like 4 weeks. So
yeah, thanks Parker Washington.
Thanks Parker Washington.
So Jacoby Myers, he's only $5,600. We mentioned this, alluded to this earlier. Jacksonville, they doubly have something to play for. So not only are they playing to not lose the AFC South and to maintain home field advantage for round 1 of the playoffs, there is a scenario where they get the number 1 seed.
Is there?
They have to win, and then if the Broncos and the Patriots lose, the Jaguars get the 1 seed.
Wild.
So
then just give Liam Cohen Coach of the Year immediately if that goes down. So.
Yeah, so it's unlikely that'll happen because we know, like I mentioned earlier, the Chargers are going to probably sit. Or are going to sit Justin Herbert, but the Jaguars, they still want to make sure they have that home field advantage in the first round. So they'll play long enough, again, to be able to get themselves a healthy lead. And I think Myers, like he's still the safe pick. You could probably go with Parker Washington and cash given the volume that he's gotten over the past couple of weeks, but I still just prefer to stick with Myers in this role.
Yeah, let's slide over to the tight ends.
So I have 2 on this front, and I gave 2 only because Harold Fandon might not play. He's been banged up, but he is 5K. And I think if Harold Fandon is healthy, I prefer to just go there. You could probably play Michael Mayer again. I should just throw that out there because he slipped my mind whenever I was thinking about it.
Yeah, he seems safe yet again.
But then the other tight end that I'm really intrigued by this week is Juwan Johnson at $4,200. Chris Olave has already been ruled out for this week. Or is at least doubtful because he had a blood clot, and so will unlikely play on Saturday. And we also know that Devon Vele is out for the rest of the year for the Saints. So it's slim pickings now for Tyler Shuck. He's got Kevin Austin. I think he still has Mason Tipton, although Tipton was out last week, so Tipton may not be back. We'll see what happens there.
They're literally... It's funny. They had, I believe it was the Saints who had that kick returner that was a beer delivery guy like weeks before. This was 20 years ago. I'm old, but they may literally be looking at beer delivery guys at this point because they have nobody else to play wide receiver. What's Michael Thomas doing these days?
Come back, run some slant routes.
He's running slant somewhere. Exactly.
Awesome. No, but so because of that, Juwan Johnson, then like he lines up as in a really good spot for a lot of targets. And I don't know, like the other thing about the the New Orleans situation this week is it is a good matchup for them. I mean, yeah, I would go there from a volume perspective. It's really easy to see Juwan Johnson being able to get there going up against Atlanta. These 2 teams do historically hate each other. So that would be the other thing to play for here.
Very much so.
And maybe that helps Bijan Robinson out as well. But I think at least for our tight end consideration, Juwan Johnson should be safe for getting a bunch of targets.
And we wrap up the cash discussion with my favorite category, C's Get Degrees. These are the pump plays of the week. And Austin, I understand that we don't want to get really, really weird. I was expecting to see some weird names here this week. It's just a defense, and I'm not busting your balls. I'm just saying you're playing it safe as you should be, though I don't know how safe this defense is.
Yeah, so I was looking at the Las Vegas Raiders this week, in part because I'm just looking for whoever the heck the cheap defenses are.
Yeah.
The Raiders, they're all the way down at $2,400 on DraftKings. They're going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, and the main reason I'm intrigued by this is because I know Chris Oludekun will take sacks,
Yeah.
and that is one thing that the Raiders defense can do is they can sack the quarterback. So I like going that route. They were kind of like the cheapest defense that I was intrigued by, but like there's a lot of very cheap defenses this week, so you can go a lot of different routes this week at defense.
Yeah, I'm going to give a little pushback on the Raiders. I have a concern that the Raiders are going to lose their locker room. It was very public what happened with Max Crosby last week, that they essentially asked him, what's that?
I missed this.
Oh, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. I don't want to spend too much time on the Raiders. Essentially, the Raiders asked Max Crosby to lie about an injury so that they could put him on IR. And he said no and left the team facility. And from what I understand, left Las Vegas. They still put him on IR. The NFL may look into it. The day they put him on IR, he filmed himself at home shooting basketball and jumping on a trampoline. It's real bad. And so my concern is the team sees this, and so it's ugly. Max Crosby's almost certainly not a Raider next season. It's a nasty situation. The one team I do like down here that's cheap, Austin, I did the same thing as you, and obviously I have my theory of always play the cheapest defense, and I'm still with it this week. Put the cheapest one into your cash lineup, see what happens. But I did something different for our thing, and I'll just mention it now. I worked my way up and found the first team who has a game that matters. And for me this week, it's the Chicago Bears. The Bears still have something to play for this week. They are down there. They're cheap. They're playing Green Bay, if I remember correctly, who is unlikely to play their starters. So to me, the Bears are not Green Bay. I'm sorry, Detroit, who is unlikely to play their starters. So I went with the Bears, who should be playing to win against the Detroit team that is likely to rest. And that's kind of where I looked at it. So.
Well, my whole Las Vegas Raiders theory did hinge on the fact that Max Crosby would be playing. So
do not play the Raiders, folks.
Do not play the Raiders then, because at that point I'm like, nope, we're good. I mean, yeah. So I like your Chicago Bears pick. I also think you could go Cleveland Browns then.
100%.
As well, going up against
Myles Garrett is not walking out of the season without this record, people. He is going to get it this week, plain and simple. And Joe Burrow takes way too many sacks. So
yeah, and also like come on, Cincinnati, please don't play Joe Burrow this week. Like you do not need.
Oh, he already said he's playing.
Oh my god.
Yep.
Well, at least Myles Garrett can break the record against a legitimate quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, sorry, folks, it was a very busy holiday season. I always joke that these weeks are the toughest weeks, and of course they're the championship weeks. So no fault to Austin for missing the Raiders drama, because nobody should have been following that. They should have been spending time with their family. I have a problem, folks. That wraps up the cash portion of the show. Quick reminder, you can play in a tournament with us as we pivot over to tournament and GPP talk. And Austin, I guess we didn't really spend a lot of time with this. So real quick, in the description of this video, you will find links to our contest on FanDuel and our contest on DraftKings. $2 contest. Jump in with us. Austin, we may have a lot of new people this week. Talk just quickly as we move to tournaments, the difference between cash and tournaments, kind of what you're doing with your lineup and what you're doing with your bankroll.
Yeah, so for cash contests, those are 50-50s, double ups, and head-to-head contests. Essentially, half the field doubles their money. So you're not getting as much earning potential as you do in tournaments, but it's easier to win and to make money in those contests. And so it's an easy way to help build your bankroll, add cash or add funds to your account, and sustain you playing tournaments where only the top 20 to 25% of contestants are going to win. And really all of the earnings are skewed way towards the top end. So you have to be essentially winning a contest of anywhere from 100 to over 100,000 people to really take home serious earnings. And so because of that, just the approach to the two different types of contests are different. For cash contests, you want to focus similar to redraft styles of fantasy football, where you want to pick players that are reliable, that you know are going to have a safe floor every week. And then for the tournaments, it's all about ceiling. And so that's where we will take some more dart throws, but also look for players that we think can hit some serious upside.
Yep. And that perfectly leads us into I get a little bit more involved in this section. We break it down by position. I always joke that Austin gives you enough players to set an entirely Austin lineup because this is his specialty. So Austin, get us started. You got 2 quarterback options. And I personally love both of them. So,
Yeah. So my first one is my favorite one, which is Caleb Williams. I am very interested in going after the Chicago Bears Detroit Lions game this week. In general, first off, the Chicago Bears, I think they want to maintain their second seed spot, maintain that home field advantage. If they lose and the Eagles manage to win, like they would knock down to the third seed, which isn't a huge deal, but I feel like the Bears are going to want to maintain that second seed. I also feel like the Bears are going to want to play their starters in general to continue to build momentum. Like it's still a fairly young team. Like Caleb Williams is a young quarterback, but also on the other side, the Lions, I don't think are going to just like roll over and say like, oh, we're out of the playoffs and we don't have anything to play for. Like this is Dan Campbell's team we're talking about here. This is the team that like knocked Aaron Rodgers out of the playoffs when like the Detroit Lions had won like 5 games that year. So I feel like this is going to be an interesting game to target. It's one of the better over-unders on the slate as well. So Vegas thinks that it's going to be a competitive matchup. So I like going towards Caleb Williams on that front. We also talked about that New Orleans Saints game. I'm intrigued by Tyler Shuck because I do feel like New Orleans and Atlanta, like they might play an actual game because 2 teams and cities hate each other. And so I'm a little intrigued by that. It's definitely fragile with Tyler Shuck because of the amount of injuries that pass catcher around him.
yeah.
But if you're looking for other ways to get unique and like cheaper options, you could go that route for sure.
Yeah. The nice thing about Shuck is he can still do it with his legs. So even if there are no wide receivers in this game, the connection with Jawan Johnson and the fact that he can get done running the ball makes it okay.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, he may be chalk, but I just have a feeling people are going to look to get weird this week. And when you look to get weird, you might pass up on a guy. Yeah. Austin, for my GPP builds, I'm going with Trevor Lawrence. He's the hottest QB in fantasy right now. Some will make an argument for Brock Purdy, but I was just looking this up. Trevor Lawrence is averaging 2 fantasy points per game more than Brock Purdy since week 11. And then if you look in that span, that's 7 games. He hasn't dud one time. 16 points in week 11, 20, 21, 19, 44, 31, 24. Purdy's been red hot for 3 weeks. Trevor Lawrence has been red hot for 7 weeks. I just feel like it's a safe play for a team that needs to win football. And this goes into Austin doing enough in the first half. We saw Drake May drop 5 tutties in the first half last week. There is zero reason that I couldn't see Trevor Lawrence doing the exact same thing, except he might do 1 rushing and get you 2 extra points. So.
Yeah, and I think that's again such an important point to emphasize is these players can get there in a half. Like they don't need a full 4 quarters for them to hit their ceiling. Like the New England Patriots players, they were sitting beginning of the 4th quarter. Like they only played really 3 quarters of football last week, and they were still in the making winning lineup. So definitely like don't just think like, oh, I need to pick players that are going to play all 4 quarters. No, like if a player can get there and be better in a half than others can in 4 quarters, like play them.
Yep. As we move on to the running backs, Austin, I realized that without paying much attention, I was shitting on one of your running backs when I brought up Bijan Robinson. So sorry about that, but you've kind of already defended it. So talk to me about these backs.
Yeah, I mean, I am very nervous about Bijan Robinson, and I'll be looking at.
But that's where GPP makes sense. Is you're not going to put him in 100% of your lineups because only idiots put people in 100% of their lineups. But why not take a flyer just in case he does go for 225 and 2 touchdowns again?
And that's kind of my thinking here is that if people are not going to play him because they're worried that he does get benched this week, I kind of want to lean into that and say like, okay, like we just saw him break a 93-yard touchdown, like. That could make your day in this kind of slate context where the scoring is probably going to be super depressed overall. And so you might not need a 240-point performance to win a tournament, which is what we typically expect. Like we saw last week, it only took 215 points, and that was a more quote unquote normal DFS week. It could only take 210 points again to take down a tournament. And so, going with a guy like Bijan Robinson, we know he can pop 30, 40 points. I'm so comfortable going with him this week. I was less comfortable going with Jahmyr Gibbs because I could see a world in which Dan Campbell says, well, we could just roll with David Montgomery, who is the older running back, which is why I'm a little bit intrigued about playing David Montgomery this week.
Yeah.
He's at 5K on DraftKings. And again, I do feel like, and again, like this is all like I'll be following some of the news reports to see like does Detroit give any sense that they might sit their starters? But if they don't want to play Jahmyr Gibbs a ton this week, they probably will give David Montgomery a bunch of touches. And going up against the Chicago Bears, like it is a decent matchup. And this game context, like I mentioned, is really good. So I'm looking at this as a way to correlate with the Chicago Bears side of it. And make sure that I'm getting access to the other side of that matchup and in the lines.
Yeah. Austin, it's not too often that I feel so strongly about a player that I think I mean, let's be clear. I do put guys in 100% of my lineup. So that's just a lie that I do feel strongly. Austin, let me just say what I'm trying to say here. I think I found the cheat code this week, and his name is Tony Pollard. One of my favorite things to pay attention to in week 18 is incentives. And of all the running backs on the slate, Tony Pollard has the most interesting set of 2 incentives. And Austin, this is game-breaking numbers on a weird week 18. If Tony Pollard gets 66 more rushing yards, he gets $250,000. If Tony Pollard gets 2 more rushing touchdowns, he gets $200,000. So Tony Pollard, with a 70-yard and 2 touchdown game, walks away with $500,000 more dollars. You know players are playing for this. You know Cam Ward can earn so much clout in that locker room if he gets this done for Tony Pollard. I think Tony Pollard, of all the backs on this week's slate, when it comes to these incentives, is by far my favorite and the most interesting player in week 18.
No, I think it's really good. I mean, it's a really good strategy too, to look at the incentives that players have that they can hit this week, because that can be a major difference maker. And again, more things that players have to play for.
Yep. And we've just seen it in the past. NFL teams want to get these things done for these guys. Coaches do it. I mean, the owners probably don't, but they're not out there calling plays. The coaches do, the coordinators do, and the teammates do.
Yeah, no, I totally am with that. The other running back I do have here as well is I'm intrigued by James Cook going up against the New York Jets this week. That's who's going up against the New York Jets.
There you go. I actually saw that, and I'm going to be honest, Austin, because you did things in a different order. I thought you had already talked about James Cook.
It's all good.
Because we broke things up. But yes, please talk about James Cook.
Yeah, the matchup is just really good going up against the New York Jets. And it's one of those things where, again, I'll need to see how they're thinking about this matchup, because what I can't really tell on its face is like to what extent, how much is it going to matter for Buffalo to get, say, the 6th seed instead of the 7th seed? You know, like they could maybe get up to the 5th seed. And I think that's the thing that feels compelling to me. And the issue here is that I'm pretty confident. Let me look up when this game is played. So the main decision point here, I think, is going to be depend on what happens.
It is 4:00 on Sunday.
And so the game, where can I find this?
I think the whole AFC is 4:00. Oh, Cleveland and Pittsburgh is Sunday night.
So that's the thing that is
Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, but regardless.
Yeah, Baltimore and Pittsburgh. If that game had already happened, I would feel like I could come into this with a read of how players are going to go. Because personally, I mean, maybe it doesn't matter who wins that games. I personally feel like if I am Buffalo, Los Angeles, or Houston, I want to play whoever comes out of the AFC North over anybody else. And that may be off, but like the way that the other
think about it. You literally just said the other 3 teams are competing for the 1 seed. You don't want to play those 3 teams.
Exactly. And so for Buffalo, like they can get up to the 5th seed. And if, let's say, Pittsburgh wins, you beat Pittsburgh. Okay, that's a way easier win to go. It's a tough stadium to go to, but like it's not a tough team to beat. Pittsburgh is not a good team right now. And so I do feel like there will be I do think there's some incentive there for Buffalo to play. And so I could see, like, if you get a half of James Cook running all over the New York Jets and he gets 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, like he then pops in those GPP contests.
Yep. I want to throw out three other running backs with incentives up this week, just so our audience can hear their names, not saying you, but these are the kind of guys you may want to find a room for in your GPP lineups. Nick Chubb seems like the weirdest of the bunch. I think he needs 91 rushing yards to hit a bonus. I just don't see it happening. Kareem Hunt, Austin, this one's interesting to me. I think he only needs 33 or 39 yards. The problem is they may get him that and then not play him anymore. And then 40 doesn't do anything for you. And we've already talked about not liking that offense. But another intriguing one, Austin, there's a chance, you've already brought up James Cook, that Josh Allen doesn't go this week simply because he needs to rest for injury. Ty Johnson needs 57 receiving yards to hit a bonus. And I think it's weird, but he would be a dirt cheap running back in 57 receiving yards in DraftKings, Austin. That's going to take him, 5 receptions? That's going to pay easily.
Yeah.
So.
I don't mind that. And like, we've seen him get some like long receiving touchdowns as well. So you could convince me to go that route. Especially if you're doing it in order to pay up for some more expensive players elsewhere.
Yeah. Like I said, just some fun ones, and I'll do that for the other categories as well. I didn't do it for quarterback, Austin, because the only quarterback who has a lot of incentives they can win this week is Sam Darnold, and he is the Saturday game. But if you want more on the Saturday game, check out the video on Club Fantasy FFL right now. Austin and Josh Hudson broke down for Captain My Captain, the Seattle-San Francisco game.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, Austin, let's move on to wide receivers. You got 4 of them here for us, one of which you've already talked about, but the other ones are very, very fun names.
Yeah, so the first one I have is CeeDee Lamb at $7,300. I'm like a little nervous about this because I don't feel like the Cowboys should play their starters personally. But freaking Dak Prescott is like, I've never had a losing season. I want to play. And I'm like, okay, well, you're probably, if you're going to play, you're probably going to, and you're going to want to win, you're probably going to want to target CeeDee Lamb. And so I feel like they will be competitive for that very reason. And I could see this is like one of those guys that is like, that can get there just on sheer volume. Or it could go overlooked because of the expensive salary within this context. And I don't know. I also feel like it's a divisional matchup. I don't think the Cowboys want to lose to the New York Giants and deal with those headlines. So they maybe just be willing to play. So I'm intrigued about going towards CeeDee Lamb. We talked about having Caleb Williams in your lineup. I'm looking to stack him with Luther Burden. He was getting really great volume. Now Burden
broke out last week.
He did, and Burden is questionable right now. So
I think it's an illness, though, not an injury. And a lot of guys have been playing through illness right now. So
that would definitely help out a lot. I do also see like Roma Dunze has a questionable tag this week, but he did not practice on Thursday, so it's unlikely that he comes back. And you're right now. So Burden actually he had a quadriceps injury.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say I'm getting him confused with somebody else's injury.
He was limited, in Wednesday practice, but he was a full participant in Thursday's practice, so he should be a full go. And I like the stack there with Caleb Williams, especially over. I mean, game theory wise, you could play DJ Moore because they're very similarly priced, and DJ Moore would be the lower rostered player. It's been so hard he's been so inconsistent in his production this week, which is again why you play him in tournaments and not in cash. But for me, I still would prefer to go with Burden. Maybe if you're doing like multi-entry contests. So and that's something that is important context here. Yeah. I play single entry contests. And so that makes me a little bit less risk averse in my tournament contests. But if you're playing a 3 max enter and you're saying I have 3 Caleb Williams lineups, then I'm like, yeah, okay, play one with DJ Moore in there. So if in a multi-entry situation, DJ Moore totally makes sense.
Yeah, I just have this weird feeling, especially if Roma Dunze can get on the field this week. This seems like let's find out what we have for 2026. And I don't know if DJ Moore is a part of the Chicago Bears plans for 2026. And so,
yeah, no, I totally hear that. I've mentioned the Tennessee Titans already once in this game. They're trying to figure out what they have, and Cam Ward has been throwing the ball a bunch. So I'm intrigued by Shamari DK as one of their receivers there. He's been getting most of the volume. And I don't know, it's just like that matchup for them. It sets up really well. I feel like he could have a decent role this week going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it's like, as much as the Jaguars are like, oh, we could have the 1 seed. Oh, we could win the division. I feel like these teams probably hate each other. And so if I'm the Tennessee Titans, I'm like, I want to make you not win the AFC South. If I can do anything to be relevant, it would be to make this game matter to you and you to like end up not having your first week.
And it's another interim head coach trying to prove himself. So
exactly. So there's to me a lot here on the table. And I mean, DK, like coming into the year, none of us knew what his name was, frankly. And so like he has something to play for too. So I like that. And then you alluded to it, Ryan, that I put Wan'Dale Robinson in here. He was in the cash spot, putting him here as well. And it's just because correlating on that New York Giants, Dallas Cowboys matchup. And I think like he has shown like the ability to get ridiculous volume. And so there's a lot of upside there available for Wan'Dale Robinson, especially now that apparently there's one less cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, now that Trevon Diggs is with the Green Bay Packers.
It's been waived and picked up by the Packers, yeah.
Oh, Dallas. Could you imagine? Like, I understand Trevon Diggs isn't like a world beater anymore, but he's still a damn good corner. If someone did this in your fantasy league, cut somebody, and then a playoff team picked them up, the world would be in shambles, and this is what's happening in the NFL right now.
Everybody would scream collusion.
Yeah. When you're getting to my wide receivers, first of all, you're looking to do a stack with Trevor Lawrence. And cash, I'm almost always going Jacoby Myers, but I do think there's some intrigue to Parker Washington. I think there's some intrigue to Brian Thomas Jr. I think there's still some intrigue to Brenton Strange, though he's been a bit of a disappointment. But stack Lawrence with one of them, or do what Austin said, get into a multi-entry and do one with each.
Yeah.
Stack him with Travis Etienne. And now I have to get to the ugly side of fantasy football. When we play a game where we rely on other adults for our entertainment, sometimes those other adults are not necessarily good people. And so I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about Stefon Diggs. I'm going to keep this on the field. But one of the things that, Austin, this is something you and I talked about the 4 years we've been doing shows together. We've lived through some pretty disgusting shit that NFL players have done. The great thing about fantasy football and the great thing about DFS is there's options. You don't have to go with a guy you don't want to root for. And Austin, you blatantly said to me, because I came to you, I had some problem with, should we even talk about him on the show? And I'm not going to get into what he did. If you want to go look it up, go look it up. But Austin, you said, I looked at him and I said, I'm not going to root for this guy. So you didn't put him in your lineup. And we say that all the time. Pick players you're going to root for. But again, I went into this focusing on something very specific, and that is incentives. The New England Patriots need to win this game.
Yeah.
Stefon Diggs, if he catches 8 balls in this game, he wins. He earns $500,000. And if he gets 30 yards, which he will get with 8 balls, he gets another $500,000. There is $1 million on the line for Stefon Diggs. And I don't want to touch on the off the field stuff, Austin, but this gentleman could use $1 million right now. So I do think the Patriots have said they are supporting him. They're in the fact-finding parts of all of this. Again, we don't have to touch on this. You don't even need to comment if you don't want to, because I have some other players I was going to talk about quickly. But there is $1 million on the line. Do with that what you will.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like also with all the injuries from a football perspective, he's likely to get the volume again like he did last week. And yeah, it's like what you said. Like, I'm probably not going to play him this week just because I don't want to root for him. He already has a checkered past in general. Like, this isn't the first time that we've had to deal with something with him. But from a fantasy perspective, and if you're just thinking about like who are the best players to target this week from a single game DFS perspective, like he definitely is on the list. I looked at him, I was like, dang, he has a really good situation this week going up against the Miami Dolphins and in a situation where they need to win to secure the number 1 seed. So I could see him being actually or having a really good fantasy performance this week.
Yep. There's a couple of other players to keep an eye on. One who may actually be more interesting than Diggs. I just don't think he can get these numbers. So first of all, I'm going to tell you, Khalil Shakir needs to score a touchdown. I don't have the money in front of me right now, but Khalil Shakir to score a touchdown, which for cash, probably a little bit more dependable. I didn't love him because Josh Allen may not play, and that just kind of bothers me.
Yeah.
Hollywood Brown needs a touchdown. I know we don't love Chris Aludican, but Hollywood Brown needs a touchdown. There's probably some money there. Keenan Allen needs like 3 catches. But Austin, there's one more guy, and I just don't think he can get it done, who has Tony Pollard-esque potential this week, and that is Deebo Samuel. The Eagles may rest starters. The Eagles are resting starters. I just don't know who all is getting rested, but the numbers are ridiculous, Austin. Deebo Samuel needs 10 catches to get $250,000. 93 receiving yards is doable for $200,000 and 2 touchdowns for $250,000. Deebo Samuel, again, could break the slate, to be perfectly honest. The issue is Josh Johnson's, I think, at quarterback again. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have at least one lineup with Deebo Samuel in it, but don't build your entire slate around Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, I mean, I could see there being a nice pop case there, and we have seen the Commanders do this before. Like, was it last year or 2 years ago? They peppered Zach Ertz with targets. I think.
I forgot about that. Absolutely, yep.
They peppered Zach Ertz with targets to help him get there,
and that was Kingsbury's first year, so that's the same staff that we're dealing with here. So,
yeah. So I like that as a shout out. It is a longer shot, but he's definitely worth a mention.
Yeah. And again, I probably could have pivoted to him, but I felt like for our listeners' sake, we needed to address the Diggs thing because it's not fun, but it is what we do sometimes. But enough about the bad stuff. Let's move on to tight ends. And Austin, full warning here, you took my guy. I wasn't sure who I wanted on GPP, but I was like, there's one guy with the most upside. I'll let you tell everybody about him. So.
Yeah, well, it's Colston Loveland. And again, like the situation is there. I'm looking to double stack Caleb Williams this week, and so going towards Colston Loveland is very appealing from that perspective. It is a good matchup again against the Detroit Lions. I think there's going to be plenty to play for here, plenty of back and forth action. And this past week, he managed to bring in 10 targets with all of the injuries going on around him. Scored a touchdown. We've seen him have really high upside. I mean, he had that 30-point game performance against the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think it's a really easy click this week, especially if you're building with the Bears in mind.
Yep. For me, I tried to decide where I wanted to go here, and Brenton Strange would have been the easy and boring one, especially since he's let us down as of late. But there was one player that stood out to me, and that is Dalton Schultz. He does have a questionable tag right now, but we need to keep an eye on him. But the fact of the matter is, we've talked about this already. The Houston Texans are playing at the same time as the Jacksonville Jaguars. As far as they know, they need to win this game, and they have a chance to win their division. And then you get Indy, Austin, who a little bit better against Brenton Strange last week, but was terrible against George Kittle the week before. You don't have a ton of other passing options here. It's Nico Collins and it's Dalton Schultz. I like Schultz a lot this week. Yeah,
no, I think that's a good call. I mean, we've seen Schultz be able to have those pop weeks too, especially when there's injuries around him. So I think that's perfect.
Yep. Two of the things, again, I'm going to keep giving you guys the incentive players. Hunter Henry is one that is interesting. If he gets 5 more catches, he gets $250,000. I think that's a nice, safe tight end for making him, again, a better cash play than he is a GPP play, but I think his price has also went up. But Austin, there's another tight end who has a big week. The problem is I don't love his team. Well, I do love his team. I don't know who his quarterback's going to be. Dawson Knox for the Buffalo Bills is probably almost a min price player for you in fantasy right now. Austin, if Dawson Knox gets 7 yards, he gets $100,000. If he scores a touchdown, he gets $100,000. If he catches 6 balls in this game, he gets $100,000. So I just want to quickly let you folks know, if he catches 6 balls, he's going to have more than 7 yards. So we'll give him 6 for 40. Austin, in FanDuel, that's 16 fantasy points for Dawson Knox. That's got to triple his salary, if not 5x his salary as a tight end over on DraftKings, I meant to say.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I mean, for a guy like Knox, like, yeah, it's going to be cheap enough that it's going to be easy. And I think I'd be a little bit concerned. I mean, yeah, they probably do play him, though. Let's help him get that incentive, though, because they probably don't play Kincaid. They probably let Kincaid get healthier.
Exactly. That's my exact thought here. Jackson Hawes is obviously a problem, but I could see them in this game forcing the ball his way.
Yeah, no, I like that one.
All right. And of course, you have to have defenses in these lineups. And Austin, you just loving the risk today because you got both your teams from the same game. Now, obviously, you've changed your mind on one of the others.
Well, my thinking originally was I'll pick the Raiders for cash and then flip the script and go Kansas City for GPP.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that is an actual very viable try.
100%.
Whoever the chalky defenses just pick from the other side. But now knowing that there might be a revolt on our hands, I'm even more intrigued by the Kansas City Chiefs for GPP. And it's just that the Raiders offense has been garbage for most of the year. And I feel like the Chiefs defense, like they'll want to have a little bit of pride to play for until they can get a couple of sacks in there. And then, I mean, they're either going up against, probably not Geno Smith, they're probably going up against either Kenny Pickett or Aiden O'Connell. Either of those guys can force turnovers, and that always creates interesting opportunities for defenses in DFS. So I like going towards Kansas City from that perspective.
Yeah, Austin, I didn't like a lot of the cheap defenses, as I told you. The Bears are the most intriguing to me, but I think if I want true upside, I'm going to stick with the big four, the four teams that are legitimately playing for the first seed or their division this week. And they have good defenses. Let me be clear. Houston, Denver, Jacksonville, New England. So when I did my rankings and how I would handle this for GPP is I just want the cheapest of those four on each site. So on DraftKings, it's Houston at 3,700. They are the cheapest of the four. On FanDuel, it's Denver at 4,600. They are the cheapest of the four. They are both expensive. I want to be very clear. You are deliberately building a lineup with an expensive defense. But Austin, I feel like they probably have the most upside this week. What I do like most about, is it all four of them? I'm trying to do the math in my head right now. All four of them are facing like a rookie or like first time quarterback because Riley Leonard's coming back for Indianapolis. We've already talked about Justin Herbert's not playing. I forget who Jacksonville's playing.
They're playing Tennessee.
I said the other team. So they're playing a rookie. He just has some games under him, and then New England, Miami. So lots of interesting game there for you. Just keep that in mind. I'll take the cheapest of that bunch. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good way to go about it. Going up against inexperienced quarterbacks is always a good pick for your DFS defense.
There we go. That wraps up the show, folks. We talked cash. We talked GPP. Let's get into the valedictorian shootout. Austin and I do a head-to-head contest every week using DraftKings scoring. No money on the line, just bragging rights. And Austin, I'm on a bit of a winning streak. I took it again last week, 117 to 102. Austin, it was incredible. We noted last week we had a lot of players in common. But even the players we didn't have in common scored almost the same points. I took a 0 because I had Matt Collins, but you had Jalen Waddle. And so like literally, and he went out after one play and scored 0.7.
Yeah.
So literally everything canceled except I went with Trevor Lawrence and you went with Jacoby Brissett. That was basically the difference in our lineup. I also had the Cleveland defense, which helped me out a little bit there. So that gives me the edge. But again, we're doing this all through the playoffs. So I'm up 9-8 right now. Austin, as I look at my lineup, I believe we have talked about every single player in my lineup. So not a lot of, actually there's one guy we haven't, but I'll explain. So Trevor Lawrence, I'm going with a 3 running back lineup, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, RJ Harvey. And I guess we haven't talked about Swift or Harvey. These are two teams where I think Detroit's going to rest. We know the Chargers are going to rest. Why wouldn't these teams lean on their running backs? And that's kind of my thought process there. 3 wide receivers, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Jacoby Myers, Dalton Schultz at tight end. So I do have 2 Houstons without a stack. And then the Chicago defense, which pairs nicely with DeAndre Swift.
Nice. Well, we will have, I think, a little bit of overlap. Oh, yeah, we have actually a healthy amount of overlap once again. So I'm going with Jackson Dart at quarterback. And then I have 2 running backs. So I have Travion Henderson as my first running back. And then I also have DeAndre Swift. I would have put Aaron Jones in here, but I was like, I cannot risk to have a dud this week. I have to get somebody that I think is going to actually play. So it's DeAndre Swift. That leaves me with 4 receivers. I also have Nico Collins and Jacoby Myers. And then I also have Wan'Dale Robinson and Michael Wilson. At tight end, I have Jawan Johnson. And then originally I had the Las Vegas Raiders at defense, but given our conversation, I'm going with the Cleveland Browns.
There you go. Perfect. So we'll give the scores to that one next week when we are doing the wild card round. But as I mentioned at the top of the show, we like to talk about our winners. This does not always happen, but both the winners happen to be hosts here at Club Fantasy. One of them on DraftKings, our very own Austin Amendolia. Congratulations, my friend. 155 points in the DraftKings contest. That is your 11th win all time. And over on FanDuel, Joel Worth, J-Dubs 1035. Congratulations, 136 points. That is his 2nd win of the season in Austin. That wraps up the regular season DFS for us here at the DFS Academy. Please let everybody know what we'll still be doing during the offseason and where they can find us.
Yeah, so first off, make sure you check out the showdown video that Josh and I did for the Saturday night matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. But then make sure you hang out with us for all of the playoff games. We will be covering all of the playoff games in some format for DFS. We'll have the DFS Academy running, still doing essentially the Saturday slate and the Sunday slate for the wild card game. And then for the divisional round and the conference championship weekends, we'll just do each of those as one slate. And then Josh and I will still be doing showdown contests throughout the playoffs as well. We'll have the first one will be the Monday night contest for the wild card weekend. And then we'll figure out which of the ones we do for kind of for divisional
Monday night game.
Yeah, it's they just keep adding games. And we'll figure out which contests we pick for the showdowns for conference championships and for the divisional rounds. But then we would definitely do a video for the showdown video for the Super Bowl as well.
Yeah. Well, folks, that wraps up the regular season. As Austin mentioned, we'll be here with you for the entire playoffs. If you liked what you heard today, go ahead and hit that like button. If you want to hear it again next week, hit that subscribe button. We pre-record this show, but it comes out every Friday sometime around 9:00 in the morning. If you happen to be listening on Apple or Spotify, hit that follow button. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for tuning in this week and all season long. Good luck in your lineup building, unless you're playing against me. We'll see you next week.